It's like really hard to find this movie. It's been strange all day. All right, let's just go out, we'll see it. How strange could things get, you know? Well, that's pretty weird. The original idea for this was that we were going to make fun of Arizona and how it's always the exact same, and how for miles and miles and miles nothing changes because it's the desert. And of course today it's snowing, so we had to call a bit of an audible. But now that we're free to drive up to Phoenix and go see this movie, yeah, we can go on an adventure and figure out how to salvage this thing.
I don't know what to say. Like, I mean,
You can't sit at a table near the front of the Starbucks and then claim to be in line.
I don't know, I'm kind of with that guy.
Our day was off to a profound start. Excited by my Starbucks coffee and the chicanery of my trusty co-pilot, we began our ascent to the great city of Tempe, where the Alamo Drafthouse was the only theater capable of showing The Lords of Chaos in its limited release. Needless to say, we ventured forth, despite the risk of man, beast, and weather fit for neither. It's pretty awful out.
All right, honey. I'm gonna start calling you honey.
well, what about the massacres in Sri Lanka, honey?
Hey, I'm excited. And we're pretty much risking our lives to go watch this movie.
Soon we were to pass the great city of Eloy, Arizona, where dreams go to die. Best known for its sights and sounds, like a gas station.
All right, so Patrick abandoned me in this car to go get some water. So we're patiently waiting for him and fucking with his car. Welcome back.
Dude.
Oh my God, no. What happened this time?
So I go in there,
Sounds pretty good. Had a good time.
Anyway, I got you a small snackable bag of chocolate. So we literally have like one patch of sun where it looks kind of like Arizona, and now we're entering like a fucking black hole.
It's happening.
And happen it did as we too ventured into a black hole of rain, dirt, and bad driving. The weather ebbed and flowed, bucking us like a bronco that had no intention of allowing us passage to meet the Lords of Chaos. Also, Angelica shot several rainbows. She was very excited about these. Hungry, famished, starving, we decided to enjoy the local delicacy from the Sonoran Desert. That is, of course, Indian food. With beverages, pakoras, and friendship at the table, we were quickly satiated, enjoying baskets of naan, vindaloo, and more rice than I care to remember. Also, whatever this is, that was quite good. That's Angelica. From there, we learned we were close to the great Four Peaks Brewing, where we headed for a quick round of libations. Also, I'm apparently dating someone who uses vertical filming, and that's depressing. Given a second lease on life, we quickly made our way to the Alamo Drafthouse, where we received our tickets, and the enthusiasm was immeasurable. We discovered the Alamo Drafthouse will, prior to a movie, show music videos and trailers for movies by the director of the main feature. It's a neat little touch. After leaving the film, we began to process, digest, and discuss, before tragedy struck. Holy shit.
What happened?
Shoot that.
Oh my God.
Shoot that. What the fuck?
Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Tempe. It's been a weird fucking day.
Yeah, it looks like a really perilous situation.
I'm very much enjoying this conversation. Can I just... Did we drive past a fucking truck that was on fire? They had indeed. No, but seriously, that was really, really strange. It was a weird day from top to bottom, but the world just worked in a mysterious way. And staring there into the abyss, we lived, laughed, learned, and discovered ourselves. Well, that was a very long day. Fortunately for me, Joe has been here the whole time waiting for me to get back and give him a report on this movie. One of the stranger days that I've had, one of the stranger movies that I think we've seen, Lords of Chaos, just to recap it real quick, is a movie about the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem. Their guitarist, played by Rory Culkin, who also runs this record label and owns this record shop, and sort of this gothic, black kind of pseudo-death cult that's emerging in Norway in the late 80s. And What it really comes down to is it's a film between Rory Culkin and his antagonist, played by Emery Cohen, who is this sort of wannabe member of the Black Circle that Rory has created. And the new character who comes in named Varg is basically kind of competing with him to see who can do bigger and better things to kind of get their nihilistic kind of message across. And so he burns down a few churches. Things kind of get spiraling more and more out of control as Rory Culkin, who's the kind of cult of personality of this group, is trying to maintain his position of leadership. The biggest thing that I'll say is this is absolutely Rory Culkin's film. And I say that in a good way and in a bad way. He's definitely the best actor. He also has the meatiest role. The downside is that a lot of the other characters in the film just feel kind of tertiary. They're not that important. They're not that memorable. They're not that interesting. Jack Kilmer, Val Kilmer's son, plays a character named Dead, who is the singer for Mayhem for a bit. He's actually really good in this, and his character's really interesting. He's one of the highlights of the film. Without getting into spoilers, he's in the first half of it, let's put it that way. But that relationship between him and Rory Culkin is really definitive of the entire viewing process. And the biggest thing I can say about this is, pick your poison of whatever band movie you want to think about. Almost Famous, That Thing You Do, Rockstar, if you like Mark Wahlberg and you're an idiot. It's that kind of band movie filtered through The Crow and Clockwork Orange. And just like it's kind of this weird hodgepodge of source material in a weird way, it's also a hodgepodge of genres. I mean, it starts out kind of this really dark comedy that's never particularly funny, and it has a way of really transitioning from this kind of cringy gothic imagery into actual scenes of tension and awkwardness and chaos, one might say, of the titular fashion. But what's really interesting about this movie is that it always knows what it is, and it knows what the scene is doing. So the tense scenes feel tense. When it's cringy for a purpose, and when it's funny, it reinforces the characters. And I'll get back to that here in just a little bit. The biggest thing I'll say is there's often a fine line to walk when it comes to gratuitous violence and using violence for effect. And this film, some of the gore, some of the horror type elements of this were some of the most profound and effective scenes that I've seen in film. They, are kind of like the horror equivalent of what I talked about when I talked about Roma, where it's not really sensationalizing anything. It just forces you to sit there. There's nothing amazingly hyperbolic or grandiose happening, and you just feel this discomfort and dread. And whenever you can see a scene that has a murder, for instance, and feel saddened and feel like what a waste, what a loss of life, what a tragic event, that means that you're actually thinking about that moment and that action, and you're not just a witness to it. And there's a really big significant difference of that. The other thing I'll say is that leaving the movie, and Helic and I were talking about how there are these moments where you're not really sure who the antagonist is as a person, how he's supposed to come off. And she thought he was a bit one note and not really believable as this antagonist type. And I was kind of feeling the opposite in the sense that, yeah, when he's being tough, I didn't buy it either. But when he's trying to show off, or he's trying to brag, or he's trying to be like the mastermind or puppeteer, those scenes are actually played kind of for comedic effect, where he is a bumbling poser, idiot wannabe. And so seeing him conducting all these nefarious deeds, I mean, he has moments where he seems tough or badass or self-confident, but at the end of the day, he's just vapid. He's just this weak character, and he kind of forms an interesting triangle between him, Rory Culkin, who's someone who kind of sees the big picture of all of these crazy acts and the gothic outfit and the music and kind of what the true purpose of all of it is, and Jack Kilmer's character, who, unlike anybody else in the film, really isn't playing a part. And that to me was a really interesting characterization. So you've got a movie that I think was unlike anything I've ever seen before. I'm sure someday I will think about it and get curious and go back to it. I don't have an overwhelming desire to watch it again anytime soon, but I can confidently say that it's a movie that, walking into it, I wasn't sure what to expect. I don't think if I had known more about the true story it's based on, or they kind of even frame it like it's a true story to an extent, like maybe things are taken out of proportion because most of the people who are involved with it aren't reliable, but I got something that I didn't and probably couldn't have expected, and that's always a really fun experience. So for me, I was very positive about it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think the downsides to it are, if you're somebody who really doesn't like dark imagery. And by that I mean, there's a website dedicated to like, does a dog get killed in this movie? Yeah, there's some animal killing in the film. There's some darker stuff. There are some things that I think could be troubling to people, but it's a very nihilistic film. It's a film that doesn't have a lot of regard for life, be it human or otherwise. And in that sense, once you kind of delve into it and you get beneath the surface, it's a very enjoyable, if not uncomfortable ride. And that was something that I think, after a very long and uncomfortable and strange day, was right up my alley. So we had a great time seeing it. We had a great time going to the Alamo Draft House for the first time. I was really impressed to really see Rory Culkin in kind of a vehicle to be the star for once. He has a brother that acts.
Sounds like a familiar name.
Yeah, he's the guy from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's got another one though. It's the guy from Richie Rich.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, his name's like McEnroe Culkin.
Oh, I love McEnroe. He's real good.
He's really good. He's really good.
He can ace it.
Oh, he crushes it. But Lords of Chaos is a movie that I think is really difficult to find right now, but it looks like they're playing it a lot more. So if you can get out and see it, if it's like Lars von Trier, you kind of know walking out of this review of it, if it sounds like something that's kind of up your alley. It's a bit all over the place. It's a very dark movie. It's pretty graphic. The only other negative I'll say real quick before wrapping up is, something that really bothers me is when a film only has like a romantic subplot just for the sake of kind of checking that box. This film does that to like the nth degree, and it's probably the only female character in the entire movie, and she only really serves the role of like identifying characteristics in the men. So that was kind of disappointing. It was kind of like a wasted character and a very kind of shallow way of pushing the story forward. So yeah, it's a dark movie. It's an interesting movie. It's kind of a boys' club to an extent, but it's a really fascinating story. And it's a movie that was oddly tragic and kind of horrifying, not because of anything that happened in particular, but because I really empathized with the main character, who began so knowing where he was and what was going on around him. He had sure footing in the world like I had sure footing in the movie, and then as things spiraled out of control, he was just way over his head. And I think so was the audience. And everybody that walked out of that movie seemed to enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I think you would enjoy it. So yeah, I guess I'm finally gonna go to sleep. That truck was on fire, man. Jesus Christ, what a week.